Yes, hello everyone. Nice to see you here. And let's talk about critical chain project management. Who of you have heard this term, critical chain? Oh, okay. I was expecting a little bit less. So it's good. Okay. Huh? Oh, well, at least you heard it. Okay, so very shortly about me, more than 12 years ago, I founded the company called TOC Sprendimai, and we are a consulting company working with the clients, helping them to become leaders in their area of activities. And, myself, I do quite a lot of engagements with the big companies, but my passion is about taking the big companies' methodologies like lean, theory of constraints, and others, and really changing and adapting for the small businesses. Because, typically the most, many consultants, especially from the West, they have quite interesting notion about small companies. I just recently was in Washington in our annual TOC conference, and one of the speakers was doing the presentation, and he said, okay, let's take an example of the small company, about $20 million annual sales. So for me, it was like, okay, maybe my perception of small companies is strange. And I really, really believe in common sense. And my opinion, common sense is a curse. Because when you have the common sense, you have to deal with all others who don't. And we always work with the unique clients. For 12 years, I've never met non-unique client. Why? It's not that we reject non-unique clients, but the first thing we ever always hear from any company we meet, not only company, any organization we meet, first thing is, we are different. We have very specifics, and we'll see what kind of specifics companies have. Okay, why I decided to talk about critical chain? It's not only about that we do help companies to implement that methodology, but quite recently, Project Management Institute published some research paper. They did some survey, small survey, asking more than 1,000 members. So I think representation is quite okay. That majority of companies, more than 2/3 of the companies, they have some in-house methodology for managing projects, but waterfall is still the #1 methodology. And surprise, surprise, what was the biggest surprise for TOC, Theory of Constraints, practitioners community, that critical chain project management is used by 30%. Well, at least they claim they are using, but we were not so, the surprise was that we thought that it's much less popular. So, and lean project management is used a little bit less than critical chain. So let's see, maybe we can combine, and my major projects, what I do with production companies or project management companies, is combining the methodologies. So why waterfall project management is so popular? Because differently from you, when I have to work with IT projects, I have to do the boring stuff. And before starting my consulting career, I worked in a big IT company, but I was in charge of the boring stuff. All of you do these, interesting things, developing, creating, testing, prototyping, and things like that. I was always in charge of the boring stuff. Money. Especially in businesses, everything about money. And previous speaker was saying, okay, the board is not pushing us, but again, it's all about the money. So, and when we talk about money, we talk about management, and management is always perceived as control. Now, what is control? When you feel that you are in control. And management want to be in control. Why? Well, because, control is when you get results you are expected. So waterfall as a methodology ensures better planning. This is the myth. But, ensures better planning and gives sense of control. We have the tight deadlines, we have phases and so on. So still, if you talk to many, many managers, not project managers, but top managers, they are still in love with waterfall methodologies. But when we talk about unique project environment, so let's see what's unique in project environment. And I took this as the bitching and moaning of one of my clients, and they are very unique for his environment. Yes, vague, ever-changing requirements, very unique. Yeah, constantly changing priorities. Urgent, very urgent, and drop everything, do this. Lack of resources. People, equipment, licenses, decisions, and many other things. There is never enough time for anything. Missed due dates. In one project management conference, I, during the lunch, talked to some guys, and at the table there were some military guys from US and from Israel. And the guys from Israel, they said, project on time, on budget, and on specs. Well, even in Bible, there is no such project. I said, well, wait, the God created the world, it took 6 days. And the guy says, well, show me his initial plan. And he planned for 6 days. Well, another thing, he had unlimited budget. And, well, I don't even want to go to talk about the quality of the project. Okay, there is too much rework activity. Any escapes, budget overruns, and constant pressure to add more projects. Why? Because the management wants more projects, more products, more features. Why? It's all about money. So what we can say, one thing, what is common about all the projects? Uncertainty. Yeah? There is always uncertainty in any project. Why? Because as a description, project is something we do for the first and the last time. Because next time, even if we do the same thing, it will not be the same because we'll do some things differently. So uncertainty is something which prevails in any IT project, not only IT, but in any IT project environment. So if things are uncertain, quite often people go from one detailed planning side to something else. Screw it, let's stop planning. Yeah, and quite often they call it this environment where there is no any plans, no priorities, or firefighting priorities. They call, well, we are now on Agile. Yes. It's okay when you are doing things for fun, but if you are in an organization, you still need to deliver to the clients or for internal clients and so on, you need to have some management. You need to have some control. So we need to stay in control. So can we, or how can we stay in control having in mind that we have uncertainty? Maybe we don't need to control every detail, but we need to have some control points. So let's go into the critical chain methodology. I'll go very quickly because it takes a little bit longer than 45 minutes to fully understand how to use that, but major things we'll see. And quite surprise, this summer, Gartner Summit in Orlando, Florida. They said there are 3 major new trends in optimizing value delivery, especially in IT projects. Cognitive neuroscience, managing reserve capacity, and critical chain project management. So it's becoming like it was at some time, it was niche methodology. Now it's becoming like the main wave. So first of all, in most of the cases, somebody who started or invented or the idea or who wants to do the project, he wants to have some expected deadline for the project. When it will be done, when it will be finished. So we need to estimate the project duration. By the way, when the project is late, can you give me the description of the moment when the project is late? Or why the project is late? Yeah, we run out of time, then we are late. So the time is really important to manage. And we typically, how we do, we have some additive rule. This is the things we're going to do. This is the sequence, hopefully. And then we add the task durations to determine the project length. But what happens when we come to any developer or any person in a project and we ask for his estimation of the task or some step in the project? Whoever had to give any estimations on how much it will take to do one or other task in your life? Okay, so when your boss or somebody like project manager comes to you and says, give me an estimate, how you feel at that moment? Are you happy to give your estimate? Why not? Well, if I ask you, what's your estimate about the temperature tomorrow here? You would give me any estimate without any problem. Why it's so hard to give an estimate? It would be so much as well precise as giving estimate on your task. Yeah? But why it's so bad, or you feel so bad to give an estimate on the task you have to do? Why it feels? It doesn't feel. It is a commitment. Yes, that's the problem, because we, as a managers, I know I was a manager, and still, you come to the person, you ask for the estimate, but you take it as a commitment. I think it affects the person's behavior. First of all, the way he gives an estimate. Well, any task has the probability of finishing. It's like this. Yeah, on average, we can do like this. But if things happen, and how you call in real life things happen? Murphy. Have you ever heard Murphy law? So what is the description of Murphy law? This is optimistical point of view. Yes? Pessimistical, no, this is pessimistical. Optimists say even the bad things can happen, they will. My point of view of Murphy law is, what is the probability of dropping the sandwich on the floor facing, the butter facing down? No. The more expensive carpet is, the more probability of destroying it. It's everything about. So when you need, or any person need to give any estimate, will he give this, or that? So we as a people, or not only we, more or less everybody in the life is not big enemy with the logic, or at least from his experience. So even if once he gave this estimate, quite soon he will be taught by the system not to be too optimistic. So, of course, we try to estimate like that. We give estimations here. So people protect some rare parts of their body. Yes. And there are lots of buffer time embedded in commitments, because it becomes a commitment. So, what happens? Okay, we did the planning, but what happens in execution? If I planned to do some work, I know that if I focus on it, it will take me 3 days. But after some negotiations, of course, I asked for 1 month. Nobody gave me 1 month, gave me 2 weeks, because typically, well, management is not very stupid. Any estimation you give, what they do, they cut. So what you do, you pad, you add something more for them to cut. But you still have some. So if I know that I can do it within, 5 days, and I have 2 weeks, now this is the moment I need to start to work on the task. Will I? Well, whoever experienced the student syndrome, have you ever heard that? Yes. Okay, let's take this unlikely scenario, but there are people like that. I've read, at least in the books, about them. That, okay, this is the moment we need to start, and he starts. And suddenly, he finishes much in advance of the planned date. What happens then? Okay, I asked for 2 weeks, I finished in 1 week. So as a good person, I will go and say, hey, I finished earlier. Will I? Why not? Thank you. Because next time, nobody gives me 2 weeks. And I need the security. So what I'll do? Well, we will use it. We just had very good example. The previous speaker finished 10 minutes before. So what we did? We didn't waste that time. We used it because we still have the time. With the questions, typically in the software development, it's called code optimization. Have you ever heard that expression? What does that mean? Because code optimization, typically it means it works, but we still have some time. So there are two things. Either we don't start before, or we use the all allocated time. So the savings we had from uncertainty, because uncertainty doesn't mean only bad things. Uncertainty means good things as well. So, but if the good things happened, we waste it. But sometimes we are late because things happen. But when things start to go late, what we start doing? Because we have the pressure of new projects, new tasks coming in, we start doing the most advanced thing, which is called multitasking. Who thinks multitasking is good? Please raise your hands. Okay. You think it's good because you can multitask. Because quite often when I talk to the people, they say, oh, others, they are too stupid, they cannot multitask, but I can. Do you want to have the surgery when your surgeon is multitasking? Cutting you, posting on Facebook, and chatting on the phone and doing another surgery in parallel. Yeah, he is well, good enough, intelligent. Would you like to do that? To have that kind of experience? No. Multitasking negatively affects your IQ. It's recently proven by MIT scientists. Really reduces your IQ. And damage can be permanent. It's even worse than smoking. Really. But typically, we do multitask. How it looks like multitasking. Okay, we have the plan like that. But things happened. We started working on the task A, and we have other duties. We have the bug popping up from the previous project we need to fix. Or suddenly we need to participate in some request for proposal preparation. Another project will just come. Yeah. So then suddenly some urgent things happen. We start working on project B. Then we come back to A. Now, this is the interference, and we still haven't finished. Yeah. Look, this is the planned time for task A, and how much it took. And don't forget that switching between the tasks is waste of time. Because it takes time to switch from one task to another, from one project to another. By the way, do you know how in Lean this wasted time is called? Muda, yes. And there are lots of muda. So, we should not forget that each task, because in production, it's quite obvious. They know that in any order, they have touch time. This is the actual working time, and the lead time. In project management, there are those two things as well. This is the actual work we need to do. This is touch time, productive time, and this is elapsed time, which things on that task doesn't happen. Then we summarize all the bad things, human behavior, resource contention. Quite often, when we plan and release new projects into the system, we never take into account how we are doing in some critical resources. So, at the end of the day, we have multitasking, we have unreported early finishes, student syndrome, Parkinson law, and any other things. Yes, and then we have the situation that the Standish Group report, chaos report, how many projects are finished on time, on budget, and on scope? Huh? Around 25, yes. It's a good, yeah, and it really improved over the last 40 years. Before it was 20, now it's 25. Yeah? So something is wrong with the classical methodology. So what is the critical chain about? We identify the longest path, but we need to take into account resource and task or logical dependencies. What I mean by resource dependencies, because quite often, let's assume that the colors means the resources. Look, when we can start doing this task, when this, and this is finished. Why? Because here we have the same resource. It cannot work on two things, on two tasks in parallel. Critical path methodology is really good. It was created on the basis of the aerospace and military projects. all of you or most of you are too young to remember those times when the Cold War was in full power. At that time, military projects had very unique feature. Who can guess what kind of feature? Basically, yes. Budget was not a priority. Time was a priority. And then, at those projects, resources were not a constraint. So critical path is working in the environments where we have no constraint in resources, works very nicely. But in real life, in quite many environments, this is not the truth. So when we identify the longest chain, that's why we call not path, but chain, resources on the longest chain of the task, depending on task dependencies and logical, we identify, and this is what we call critical chain. But that's only the first step. We identify the critical chain. But then what we need to do is to take our buffer time from each task. Because do you agree that in any task estimate, there is enough or a lot of buffers? Who ever gave the estimation without any buffering? Okay, so is there any buffers in the estimations? No. We always buffer ourselves, but there is no buffers. So how much we need to take? If I come to when we do implementations in the environment, and you go to any resource and say, hey, give me your buffer. How much of the whole time he will give you? 5%, 10%? No, we take half of the estimation. But then we need to change one rule. And this is the hardest rule to change. Estimations become just estimations. They are not commitments. And we know that in many cases, resource will be late or it will take longer than the optimistic estimation of the task. But we know that uncertainty exists and things happen, so we need to buffer. So what we do, we take half of the whole time of the critical chain and put it at the end of the project. So basically, 1/3 of the project, estimated project time, is buffer. Is it enough? In most cases, it's good. The second thing is not only to have buffers, because we have the critical chain, we have the feeding buffers, just to be sure that on the feeding chains when things happen, where the critical chain is not affected, and there is algorithm how to calculate, and nobody does it manually because there is plenty enough of software and really affordable software. But we have the buffer at the end, and then we turn to the second thing, because with the planning, it's over. Project start, due date, and this is the buffer. Then we switch, we change not only rules in planning, because this is the best as we could do in planning. Now it comes execution. And quite often in production and in project management, when you plan really tightly, like in waterfall, and something serious happened in the project, how you solve the problem in that case? You had a plan, something happened. What's your next steps? Yeah, but you see that some things are getting late. So what you do? Replan. Okay? Why it's bad? Why solving some local problem with replanning is bad? Because you had some local problem, and when you do replanning, what happens? It affects all the project. Suddenly, small uncertainty affected all of the project. With the buffers, it's not a problem. We don't replan, we just start consuming the buffer. Okay? Our buffer became smaller. And then we start managing according to buffers. Okay, first of all, priorities. Who gets the priority when the resource, let's say, take an example, resource has 3 tasks in a backlog. Okay? There are 3 tasks pending for him. What is the priority mechanism typically in an organization? Which task he starts working first? Okay, easiest if he has the right to choose, or the most interesting, but quite typically he has no right to choose. Somebody decides for him. So what is the major criteria, typically? Not necessarily the client, but project manager or somebody who shouts the most gets a priority. And, okay, we got, as a manager, I got the priority, so my level of voice going down, others project managers' voice level goes up, and then in the middle of the task, we do the switch, multitask. Now, what we do, we look at the status of the project buffer. So the less buffer we have, the more priority, the high priority of task it is. There is no shouting or anything. Very clear priorities. And we typically use the color coding, so we have the full buffer. It's 3 colors. 1/3 is green, yellow, red. And typically we add another 4th color. It depends on the client. I prefer to have brown color. So when somebody asks, okay, how we are doing with that project, we deeply in brown, because it really, but not always clients, they say, no, let's use black. Okay, if you prefer black, okay. But then we have the priority system. Again, if we are in red, we know we're not late. We still have some buffer. But it means we need to add more efforts or do something as managers in order to make sure we are not late. And we have signals. It's not that just one task is late, therefore let's have all the hassle. No, red means this project is in danger. Of course, when we release the project, additional projects in the pipeline, we look at what happens in our drum resource, as we call the most loaded resource. You remember, the multitasking is wasting resource time. Where is the highest multitasking, typically? Imagine an organization, who does the biggest part of multitasking? The most loaded resource. Why? Because everybody needs them. And in the place where we want the most of the effectiveness, we waste the biggest. So we need to stop, and therefore, sometimes we stagger release of the projects. We don't start the project. Because we can release many projects and nobody finish on time. And it takes long time. Quite often, stagger, and if you see, it's quite resonates with the Agile, not too much releasing. Yeah? And typically, releasing could be or is through the drum resource. Yeah, so what we do, we every day, on the task level, status is updated. That's another thing, it's really difficult to implement. First, it's more with the management, because we say, okay, no, all the estimations are just estimations, and they say, oh, if I will not keep my people accounted for the dates they set, they will never finish the task. Because it's not it's just estimation, it's not compulsory. No, it doesn't happen. The second thing is daily reporting on when do you expect to finish that task. And I don't know why, okay? I don't know why, but that's the hard thing for any people to just connect to the system and write one number. I will finish in 3 days, in 2. It takes too much time. Yeah? And this is reporting how situation is, project status. And this is the buffer situation. And this is critical chain complete. And we got into red, some actions taken, we recovered the buffers, and the project finished on time. So, then, critical chain project management is not another flavor of Agile, but when you have the big project, you can do it, plan in a critical chain manner, and then you have some task running in Agile way. CCPM, critical chain project management, focuses on orchestrating the activities among team members through effective scheduling. And it doesn't try to impose certainty on uncertainty and gives you over control of project situation and priorities. We already implemented in 2 companies, IT companies. They had Agile, and then we came and implemented with the Agile critical chain, and their response was that if I had to do it once again, I started with critical chain and then Agile. Yeah? And one of the companies are quite small, 150, no, not 100, 1,500 developers. Yeah? So, and they managed to get from 43% projects on time to 95% projects on time, with the same amount of money and things like that. Okay, questions?
Okay, who has questions? We have one hand here.
Thanks, that was very interesting and reflects me back, because I was looking to critical chain project management a while ago. I had a problem with it, only one problem. How to handle the lines back, because you put in a project plan, developer, then testing, and in testing you solve issues and it has to go back to development. So how in a critical chain project management it's sorted?
It's more on how the planning is done. Yeah? So we say, okay, we develop something, then we do the testing, and we do the finalizing and as a step. And while it's not finished, maybe it could be 2, 3, 5, 10 iterations. Yeah? And okay, in some areas where there is a lot of uncertainty, we worked with one area, new product development. Yeah? So they put not like 1/3 of the project buffer, but they had half of the just bigger buffer and managing. But again, it's you don't need to plan precisely each step.
But then the drum buffer doesn't work, because if I need a next step, again, the drum buffer rope.
You are mixing drum buffer rope is from production management, and it works absolutely differently. And this is critical chain. Yeah, it's about the planning. Basically, I haven't met any company yet for 12 years who knows how to do the proper project planning. Really, the things you have as in one company they call blue sausages from Microsoft project, some, list of blue sausages. This is not the project plan. And so typically when we do implementation, it takes 10 days to build the proper project plans, and then 1 week to launch all the things and so on. So it's about how to do the good, not too detailed, because when you have too detailed plan, you lose the control. When you have too big plan, you again lose the control. So the good project network, how to build project network.
But you're still making assumptions there is never line back. It is impossible in this method.
Line back, what does mean line back? Okay, we have some resources used, and we need to finish that. So maybe we don't need to have such a detailed tasks, and because we talked uncertainty. How many iterations can we predict? Maybe we say this is the task to get some result, and maybe it takes 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks. Well, it's not so long, but it's again, don't be, because it's always to be about right, then exactly, precisely wrong. And when I say just list of sausages is one way, and another is too detailed with the 2-hour task and so on. It's too detailed.
Okay, who has
If you
questions?
want more information, you can find on our websites. There are different websites where you can have more detailed information on or discussion or articles of how to do the planning, how to do the buffer management, and how to stop multitasking. Because first thing, if you want to remember just one most important thing from this presentation, one, reduced multitasking. What is the multitasking? Is switching between the tasks. So stopping to work on the more important task, and you can do the progress. And switching to less important just because somebody was screaming or just big boss came and said, why you're not working on that? Just because. Save your brains, reduce multitasking.
Very good advice. Okay, I don't see more hands here. Come on, guys. I know you can ask more questions.
Yeah, because we still have, let's do the code optimization.
Let's do multitasking. Here you go.
Test. You explained that adding the buffer, instead of adding a buffer to each task,
Yes.
You prefer adding the buffer at the end of the project, like
Yes.
the project. But what happens when you finish that? Let's say you finish the tasks faster than you wanted, so the buffer expands that way, or that's just how it works. Like,
Yeah, the major thing is do not optimize locally. Now, when we have in each task we have the buffer, so whenever it finishes earlier, we still use that time. Yeah? When we have the buffer at the end of the project, we have the aggregation. So some earlier finishes compensate for some delays. That's the major thing.
Another question. What happens when the buffer gets like really low? What do you do then?
Well, first of all, why you waited? The project management is about, well, the word managing. So what you do, you see the situation. So typically, if the buffer is 1/3 of the project, so within 3 weeks, let's say 3 weeks passed, and we consumed 2 weeks of the project. So as a project manager, I know that I'm consuming project buffer too fast. Well, why I'm waiting for the last? Because typically in the critical path or typical project management methodologies, delays happens as a surprise. Because typically, how we measure progress, how many % of the task we've done, how we manage the percentage of the task done. Okay, 10 days to do the task, 8 days passed. I've done how many %? 80%. And you know the rule that 90% of project takes 90% of time. The last 10% of project takes another 90% of time. Why? Because when we manage progress in the percentages, it doesn't matter what we do, we try to show some progress. In here, we focus on critical chain. If you are not proceeding on critical chain, you are not progressing. So you can see you started to consume your project buffer too fast. Okay, you plan something in advance, you talk to some people, and you try to recover your buffer. Yeah? So you don't wait for the last minute. And yes, I had one client, he came to training, he read the books, and he said, I implemented, but results didn't improve. He said, my first question is, what do you do when the buffer becomes red? He said, nothing. I say, okay, it's red. Yeah, so it's not management. The project buffers, this is the signals when to act. It's not only priorities, but it's when to act. And if buffer is red, maybe we add another resource. Or maybe we then look to cut the corners and so on. But like most of the times when we do with the clients, when we do the first proper planning, quite often their promised due dates are in real. Yeah? You see that when you put all the necessary tasks in a necessary sequence, it takes 6 months. But suddenly, somebody promised for the client to do it in 4 months. And you know, miracle doesn't happen. And one of the conferences, the guys from Statoil were presenting on project management. And you know, they are doing small projects, like $3 to $4 billion projects. They said, our typical methodology is we plan, we budget, we multiply by 2, then we go to the church and pray. But nobody answered yet for the prayers. Yeah? So then we don't need to pray. We need to manage. Okay.
Great. I have the last question. So, Nerius, can you advise what you do when you're getting into the brown area?
Well, it's too late. And again, I said, why you're waiting for your projects to get? Why you are not acting? And this typically in ordinary environment, you never know when it's too late. Here with buffers, you can start acting quite in advance.
Great. Thank you for your nice speech.
Thank you.
And here's our small gift from Agile Lithuania.
Thank you.
Give a big applause one more time to Nerius.